I had a lot of things I wanted to talk to you about tonight, and I worked on just getting into a bit of a structure to maybe talk a bit about where I'm coming from as an artist in the way that I use subculture in my work. And also, I guess I'll just start off by sort of outlining some of my approaches to subculture, and some of the sort of free passes, I suppose, I get by a couple of the different sort of roles that I come to. So number one, there's an image of me, performing this song, pretending I'm in a hardcore band, basically as part of an artwork. So, as an artist, I feel like you are lucky you have a bit of a license to sort of dip into all sorts of different subcultures. Some people also think, well, artists are a subculture within themselves, which is probably correct as well. The other shot there is me skating. I've been a skateboarder since I was very little actually, and it formed a really important part of me getting to understand about music and art and a whole lot of other things, sort of through being a teenager. So I feel like skateboarders are also can sort of pick and choose the subculture that they want to identify with. Again, skateboarders, subculture within themselves, but there's a lot of skateboarders that view themselves as being very much into metal. A lot of them will think they're into punk or hip hop or whatever. Again, it's another sort of license to just sort of dabble as you see fit. The other theme that underlies this work and underlies my talk is a fairly important one, and it's about isolation and subcultures. So, when I want to make the work about subcultures, the context of Kazula Powerhouse and looking at, the city of Liverpool, it was really interesting for me to think about how this kind of isolation, not being in the centre of what's going on, being on the periphery and having sort of a view into it, being able to dip into it, or feeling excluded from certain subcultures that might always happen in an inner city. I should say the kind of subcultures I'm thinking of, which are, music and art and skateboarding kind of subcultures, very urban subcultures, obviously. I grew up in the country in Denilton. This is a shot from, I don't know where in Denilton, but it's very, it really reminds me of home. It's very much that, very flat, very empty, really isolated. So I started skateboarding when I was in Denilton. I started getting into punk and hardcore when I was in Denilton. No one skateboarded, no one liked punk or hardcore. So I was always on my own, and I was always getting it second hand. So this isolation, this separation through the media being medium, obviously, something that's in between you and what's really going on has always been a part of my experience of subcultures. And I still very much like to sit outside them in a way without truly committing to them. So I'm not, I'm actually, again, get the best of both worlds. But probably my entry into being committed to skateboarding and committed to some of the subcultures that went along with it was through this magazine, Thrasher magazine. So it's a skateboarding magazine. It started at the end of skateboarding in the 70s, so sort of 1981, and it always took this hardcore approach. All the skate parks in America just shut down, and everything became DIY, and punk was sort of coming off, and skaters were really identified with punk music, and Thrasher would have covers like this with Glenn Danzig, famous singer of Misfits of San Francisco, New York, punk hardcore band. So I found this really compelling. What is this skateboarding magazine that has all this information about punk, metal, and art as well? Later on, there was actually a magazine branched off Thrasher, and it focused on art. Juxtapoz magazine, if anyone knows that magazine. Same sort of publishers. So, artists like Puffhead would often have the cover. This is not a great piece of skateboard art, but it's definitely a defined era. This was probably the first Thrasher I ever owned, and so sort of right away, the art is in there as well. Of course, obviously, it's on all the skateboards, bottom of every skateboard that you might get a hold of, and it's led to me being interested in screen printing, for example, which led me to go to art school, study print media, and I now lecture in the print media studio at Sydney College of the Arts. Okay, but back to this sort of skateboarding subcultural mix. Bands like the Big Boys were a really interesting skate punk band. So this whole idea of skate punk is something I found really compelling, and I really like the imagery, I like the idea of it. The music, you know, for me was a real revelation. I think I sort of started getting into, you know, in my early teens I listened to The Cure and Depeche Mode or something like that. But as soon as I sort of started my impression, I, you know, got Dead Kennedys, Black Flag, all the American hardcore bands, which are sort of post-punk, not post-punk style, but they came after punk and it was much more extreme, hardcore punk. And for me that was perfect. 16, 17, you know, nothing spoke to me more than that kind of music. The bands like Whiskey Do, also really amazing band that sort of morphed into more of a mainstream sort of paved the way for bands like R.E.M. But initially very extreme, very fast. Their first album, called Let's Be Recorded, is incredibly sort of fast and very messy, but there's an amazing connection that holds it all together. Interestingly, you know, bands like the Big Boys and Husker Du, you know, they weren't from the big cities in America. They were from these guys from Minneapolis. Big Boys were from Dallas in Texas. So, Austin, sorry, in Texas. So, again, all sort of outside the centres, interestingly. Also, you might notice another one of my issues here is this idea of the bands being, most of them, American. I listen to a lot of Australian bands, but, you know, I probably must admit I got mostly excited by the American ones. It's mostly the influence of this media, which I can't really escape, and the influence of being isolated, which has a really strong, I think just a really strong effect on how you view things. Anyway, sorry, I'll talk a bit more about that later. This is another one of my favourite bands, and in a way a band that probably invented and defined the genre of hardcore Black Flag. So Henry Rollins, the lead singer, was also famously a skateboarder as well. So a lot of these bands have this direct connection to skateboarding. So this is a poster that I've done for this exhibition, and I'm really trying to explore that clash of the imagery and the power and the love that I have for this hardcore music with sort of clashing with the reality of your everyday existence. My existence growing up in the country was listening to, you know, quite extreme hardcore punk music. No one else knew what it was. You couldn't see it anywhere. I never saw a band live playing until I was probably 18. So there's always this absurd separation. I found connections in my own way, you know, to being from the country and listening to this music, but I just wanted to talk about this clash. So the weird banality of different high schools that are in this area, I wanted just to deploy different names to different high schools as if they were different hardcore bands in a scene. This absurdity of, you know, Liverpool Boys High School being some hardcore band, I thought it was funny. And, you know, just the idea that the devastation of high school, you know, this apocalyptic sort of post, you know, very sort of harsh and extreme world that these bands sing about and come from, and, you know, that's high school shows. So, just leading into discussion about another work in the exhibition. This is Minor Threat. So, along with Black Flag, probably one of the most powerful sort of bands that define this genre. Really interestingly, you know, again, in the case of skateboard right there with the sheep on it, that's on the side of the building there. So again, another skateboarder into a really amazing hardcore punk band. But he also accidentally started another subculture called straight edge, which is they have this motto, excuse my French, don't drink, don't smoke, don't fuck. It's being straight edge is not being tainted by drugs or alcohol, not being sexually promiscuous, and just sort of respecting yourself is how he would probably do it. It's when I just spawned a whole movement, which he never really intended. It's a movement that did actually have some inroads in Australia and continues to. It's ongoing. And I think these rules of this, I just wanted to talk about this idea of Australia and being this subculture and how does that survive in Australia. So Australian culture and this very American influence of the very American subcultural idea, how can I talk about them sort of clashing together? And I thought, well, the ligaphone is a famous Australian instrument. It's holding a ligaphone, you know, the instrument made out of bottle caps. So these are the bushwhackers. Apparently, ligaphones are an Australian invention. So I thought I'll spell out the famous logo of the band using ligaphone. So, you know, for a band that is about not drinking, not smoking, etc., I thought it would be funny to record a version of their song. You saw that still being the first slide, and also make these ligaphones. So it's kind of a joke, it's kind of a question, it's kind of, hopefully something that raises questions and just acknowledges that big separation that I find, you know, I'm really interested in Australia and yet I'm also always really compelled by American bands. And carrying on with that, this is another little lead up to a little context behind some of the another one of the images that I thought I would show. This is Slayer, probably the first metal band I really loved, and an amazing band that had so much power and so much influence and just incredible speed, and I just love them, and lots of other people really love them. They're undeniably sort of fantastic. Just introducing you to a couple of bookends of my metal world in a way. So Slayer being the start of it, and you know, they're quite extreme in their own way, leading up to sort of bands today that have they're almost like art noise music. This is Sun. It still looks like Sun where it's written, but they're called Sun, and they're kind of a drone doom kind of a band that almost take all the tropes of metal and all the worst things that your parents might believe about metal and kind of just exaggerate them and play them out into this sort of massive, you know, they're playing with all the imagery, they're playing with all the ideas of it, but they're making something that's really quite stunning. Monolithic sort of drones of metallic noise, you know, the whole costumes and everything, it's, you know, it's, they do it with a tiny sense of humour. At the same time, they just love all the tropes of metal and are doing something really interesting with it. So when I see artists like this guy who I really like, Frank Violette, an American artist, he's works very seriously and in a very committed fashion with the idea of subculture, the idea of metal and hardcore, and connects it to broader things out there in the world. So I really like this artist, and he worked with Sun to do this installation. So he cast all of their amps and all of their various instruments in salt. And they cast all their equipment, cast it in salt, installed it in this gallery with this melts down, destroys sort of speaker in the foreground, and part of the installation, Sun played in the next floor down. So they played a different story of the building. So you'd just be there looking at this work, and the floor would be vibrating with their incredibly loud sort of drone music. So I thought, well, if he's so committed to that, I really want to talk about some of these bands I really like today. Sweet Cobra, Doom Riders, fantastic Converge. They're sort of on the metal, hardcore crossover, Converge. Doom Riders are kind of almost classic metal, Viking metal, you know, like Iron Maiden, almost crossed with much more extreme music. Sweet Cobra, sort of like a stoner metal, so stoner being, you know, I don't know, things like that, and sort of a bit more groove, with a very deep sort of drony element as well. And other just black metal bands, recently I've just really started appreciating. I'm 43, starting getting black metal. It's really bad, finally regressing, I think, but I just can't help but love, you know, the epitome to me of subculture and the power of it is the most credible subculture, in a way, is metal. possibly black metal. They're so committed. I'm not really worthy talking about metal in lots of ways because I'm a bit of a fan of gypsy and I don't have the encyclopedic knowledge that you really need to be a true sort of aficionado. Nonetheless, I deploy my knowledge into another one of my posters here that's in the exhibition. Again, same idea as the other one, bringing sort of the banal everyday, clashing into this sort of subcultural fantasy world that people might live in as a teenager. You know, all the evil imagery, the nasty text that you can't even read. It's a very romantic idea, really, about being into this tortured, doomed teenager. So all of those numbers there are numbers of bus lines to travel around Liverpool and into town. The most sinister being N50 because it's at night time, it's the night bus. But any bus, I'm sure, you can have a pretty dark experience on a bus. The South Line is of course the railway line here, and if you need any more transport, just call up to 500 and be updated. So finally, just wanted to give a bit more background to just the final image I wanted to talk about. So this is my last couple of slides. And this is the influence of, bands that have a very sort of culty, subcultural. I really have dwelled in the genres in the previous two ones. Metal, hardcore, I actually really like sort of, they're very tight lockdown genres in a way. I really like these bands because they're very hard, for a lot of people to come at. Some people obviously had a bit of a time in the spotlight, but bands like Butthole Surface, Big Black, Jesus Wizards, bands I really love, and they really are art in their own right. And yeah, the last poster I did was sort of just inspired by bands like Sonic Youth. Here I are working with one of my favourite artists, Mike Kelly, in 1986. So this connection they had, every album cover, every album cover they have, the top line, is the Sonic Youth LP. That's the cover to Goo, and that's by a very famous underground artist named Avon, who's gone mainstream in a sense in the contemporary art world. The other one, Sonic Youth 30, with the orange toy space on it. That's done by artist Mike Kelly, who's one of my favourites. That's why I remember this image, new performing video in 1986. Just another one of those, really nice sort of moments where some of your worlds come together. So I kind of tried to work on this artier, sort of more complete, sort of less structured graphic approach to a lot of these sort of imagery, these posters. And again, just wanted to have a clashing up against the reality of, I just downloaded something from the council website, a map of all the different cities, towns, areas within the Liverpool City local government area. It was issued on April 2013. Pretty valid for Zula, Lernia. So just the point of all is if battle bands playing in the festival or perhaps some crazy freaking out picture. And that's where I shall leave you.